The war was over, but for Draco Malfoy, the battlefield had simply shifted from the ruins of Hogwarts to the desolate halls of Malfoy Manor. Dust motes danced in the slivers of weak sunlight that pierced the drawn curtains, illuminating not grandeur but decay. He walked through rooms heavy with the silence of abandonment, each step echoing the emptiness within him. The trials had been merciful, a testimony from Harry Potter himself securing his freedom, but freedom felt more like a heavier cage. He was a ghost in his own home, haunted by the screams, the choices, the indelible mark on his forearm. His mother, Narcissa, moved like a delicate phantom, her beauty still sharp but brittle. Shattered by the weight of their choices, she spoke little, her eyes often distant, lost in memories that Draco shared. His father, Lucius, remained confined, his spirit broken, his name irrevocably stained. Draco felt a strange mixture of pity and resentment. He was expected to rebuild a legacy he no longer believed in, to be the Malfoy heir without the Malfoy pride. Nights were the worst. Sleep offered no escape, only vivid replays of green light, frantic whispers, and the chilling cold of his aunt's laughter. He would wake in a cold sweat, gasping for air, the taste of fear a bitter tang on his tongue. Sometimes he'd find himself at the window, staring out at the expansive, uncared-for gardens, feeling a profound loneliness that transcended mere solitude. He was adrift, without purpose, a discarded piece on a chessboard whose game was long over. His only escape came in the form of letters. Not the elegant sealed missives of the old world, but hurried, unsigned notes tucked under his door. They spoke of forgotten texts, obscure potions, and a fascination with ancient runes, subjects that, surprisingly, captured his attention. The sender was anonymous, their handwriting neat but unremarkable, their insights sharp, sometimes even witty. It was a lifeline in his isolated existence, a connection to a mind that saw beyond his tarnished name. He found himself looking forward to them, a small, illicit thrill in the dull monotony of his days. He started replying, leaving his own notes in a designated spot, a hollow in the ancient oak tree by the estate gates. Their correspondence became a quiet, clandestine ritual. He found himself sharing thoughts he dared not speak aloud, opinions that challenged his upbringing, and even glimpses of the profound weariness that weighed on his soul. The anonymous person, in turn, offered no judgment, only thoughtful responses that sometimes subtly nudged him towards introspection, sometimes offered a rare, shared laugh. This fragile connection, born of desperation and anonymity, became his fragile solace. He knew it was dangerous, an unknown variable in his already precarious life, but he couldn't bring himself to stop. He needed it. He needed something. Months turned into a year. The letters continued, a thread connecting Draco to a world beyond his self-imposed prison. His anonymous confidant, who he mentally nicknamed Chiron for their wisdom, had become an unexpected anchor. Their exchanges had grown more personal, delving into philosophical debates about right and wrong, the nature of power, and the terrifying weight of free will. Draco often wondered about Chiron's identity, sketching faces in his mind, none of them fitting the elusive intelligence that danced between their words. His infrequent trips to Diagon Alley were torturous. The whispers, the glares, the pointedly averted eyes. They were constant companions. Shopkeepers were polite but cold. Former classmates either ignored him completely or offered pitying glances that felt worse than scorn. He was the ghost of a war he hadn't truly fought, but whose shadow still clung to him. He frequented Flourish and Blots, seeking refuge among the old tomes, and often found himself drawn to the section on ancient curses and dark artifacts, a morbid curiosity he couldn't shake. One particularly gray afternoon, as he browsed an antique shop, a familiar scent drifted past him, old parchment, lavender, and something distinctly earthy, like damp soil. It was a scent he'd subconsciously associated with Chiron's letters. He dismissed it, a trick of his mind, until he heard a soft, exasperated sigh from an aisle nearby. He recognized the tone. It was the same one he imagined Chiron making when reading one of his particularly cynical rants. He peered around a stack of dusty cauldrons. There, hunched over a forgotten grimoire, was Hermione Granger. Her bushy hair was, as ever, a wild halo around her head, and she wore a worn jumper, smudged with what looked like ink. She muttered to herself, a familiar habit, as she meticulously studied the book. A small, almost imperceptible gasp escaped Draco's lips. Hermione Granger? It couldn't be. The brilliant, infuriating Gryffindor, the mudblood he had tormented for years, his intellectual equal, his constant nemesis, his Chiron? His blood ran cold. The irony was a cruel, twisted joke. His only confidant, the only person who had seen beyond his surname, was the very person he had tried so hard to break. The revelation hit him like a physical blow, stripping away his carefully constructed composure. He watched her for a long moment, a storm of conflicting emotions warring within him. Disbelief, anger, a grudging respect, and something else, something terrifyingly close to relief. He quickly retreated, unnoticed, his mind reeling. Draco returned to Malfoy Manor in a daze. The letters from Chiron now felt like a cruel deception, a puppet show where he was the unwitting marionette. He reread their correspondence, each word taking on a new, unsettling meaning. Her subtle challenges, her deep insights into his character, they were all so distinctly her. The person who had seen through his masks, who had offered him a glimpse of acceptance, was his greatest adversary. The thought made his stomach churn with a mixture of betrayal and a strange, unfamiliar sense of awe. He stopped replying. The hollow in the oak tree remained empty. He half expected her to send a direct owl, demanding an explanation, but she didn't. The silence was deafening, a new kind of torture. He paced his room, conflicted. Should he confront her? How could he? What would he say? Thank you for being the only person who understood me, even though I spent years making your life hell. The absurdity of it was laughable, yet the pain in his chest was very real. A week passed. Then, another. The emptiness grew. He found himself missing their exchanges, the intellectual sparring, the quiet comfort of being truly seen. He missed her. He hated himself for it. He hated her for making him feel it. One evening, under the cloak of a heavy downpour, he found himself outside the oak tree. A small, neatly folded piece of parchment was tucked into the hollow. His heart pounded. It was her handwriting. He unfolded it with trembling fingers. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a demand. It was a single sentence. Silence speaks volumes, Draco, but it doesn't always speak the truth. The words hit him with the force of a stunner. She knew. She had known all along that he knew. And she still hadn't judged him. She was simply waiting. He felt a wave of shame wash over him, followed by an unexpected surge of courage. He picked up his quill, his hand surprisingly steady. He wrote a reply. Not apologetic, but honest. He confessed his shock, his anger, his fear, and yes, his gratitude. He confessed everything he had been too proud to admit. He ended it simply. Why? He left the note, feeling lighter than he had in years, yet terrified of the response. The next morning, a new letter awaited him. It was longer this time. Hermione explained her motives, her insatiable curiosity, her initial amusement at his anonymous rants, and then a dawning realization that beneath the cruel mask, there was a deeply hurt and conflicted individual. She admitted she had seen a vulnerability in his letters that she rarely saw in anyone else. She spoke of her own loneliness post-war, the burden of being, quote, the brightest witch of her age, and how their intellectual exchanges, despite their past, had offered her a unique challenge and connection. She concluded with a question. Are you willing to face the truth, Draco, and truly speak it? Their correspondence resumed, but with a stark difference. The anonymity was gone. Each word carried the weight of their shared history, their public personas, and the raw vulnerability of their newfound connection. Draco found it excruciatingly difficult at first. He self-edited, trying to revert to his old sarcastic self, but Hermione's gentle yet firm prodding always brought him back to authenticity. She challenged him to confront his prejudice, his fears, and the very foundation of his identity. He hated it, and he loved it. They met eventually, under the guise of research, in a neutral, abandoned part of Diagon Alley, a hidden alcove behind a disused bookshop. The first meeting was awkward, stilted. He saw the flicker of apprehension in her eyes, the ghost of their past animosity. He saw the scar on her arm, a cruel reminder of his family's role in the war, and his stomach clenched. He wanted to run. But she didn't. She looked at him, truly looked, past the Malfoy name in the dark mark, into the tired eyes of a man struggling to find his way. She initiated the conversation, her voice soft but firm, talking about their current research into neglected magical practices, as if they were old colleagues. The pretense was thin, but it allowed them a buffer. As the hours passed, the old intellectual sparks ignited, now tempered by a fragile respect. He found himself laughing, a genuine, unforced sound, for the first time in years, at one of her wry observations. Their meetings became a clandestine ritual, held in dimly lit corners of forgotten libraries, silent museums, or remote spots in the countryside, always under the cloak of secrecy. They spoke of everything: the aftermath of the war, the broken wizarding world, their individual burdens. He confessed his nightmares, his crippling guilt, the pressure of his name. She, in turn, shared her exhaustion, the expectations placed upon her, the quiet anxieties that plagued even the brightest witch. They found solace in each other's shared understanding, a unique bond forged in the crucible of their past. But the world was not ready for a Malfoy and a Granger. Whispers would destroy them. Their connection was a fragile, dangerous secret, built on stolen moments and unspoken desires. One evening, after a particularly intense discussion about the nature of forgiveness, a silence fell between them. The air crackled with unspoken tension. He reached out, his hand hovering over hers, a silent question. Her eyes met his, wide with a mixture of fear and longing. He saw his own desperate hope reflected there. He knew this was a precipice. They could step back, retreat to the safety of their separate, lonely lives, or they could fall. He leaned in, and she didn't pull away. The kiss was hesitant, a tentative exploration, born of shared pain and an undeniable forbidden pull. It was not the passionate embrace of teenage romance, but the desperate, hopeful connection of two souls scarred by war, finding unexpected refuge in each other. It was a secret, whispered truth in a world that would never accept it. They both knew the cost, the public outcry, the betrayal it would feel to their respective sides. Their relationship became a tightrope walk over an abyss. Each stolen glance, each hushed conversation, each lingering touch was a defiant act against the expectations of their world. Draco found himself changing, subtly but profoundly. He was less guarded, his sneer replaced by a more thoughtful, somber expression. He started to see the world not in black and white, pure blood versus mudblood, but in shades of gray, in the individual struggles and triumphs of people. Hermione was his anchor, his conscience, his unexpected light. But happiness for a Malfoy was always fleeting. The Ministry was tightening its grip on former Death Eaters, demanding more visibility, more contributions to rebuilding the magical world. Lucius Malfoy, still confined, began sending increasingly desperate letters, hinting at political maneuvers that would restore the Malfoy name at any cost. Draco felt the old chains tightening around him. He knew he couldn't hide forever. And he couldn't drag Hermione into the darkness of his family's legacy. One rainy night, in their secluded alcove, Draco made the agonizing choice. He had to push her away, for her safety, for her future. His voice was hoarse, thick with unshed tears, as he spoke the words he thought he'd never utter again. He told her it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that their worlds were too different. He used his old cruelties as a shield, hoping to drive her away with venom. But this time, she saw through it. Hermione's eyes were filled with a profound sadness, but also understanding. She didn't fight him, didn't plead. She simply looked at him, seeing the sacrifice behind his words, the love he was trying to protect her from. She knew it would shatter him, but she also knew he believed it was for her own good. She reached out, her fingers tracing the scar on his forearm, a silent acknowledgement of the pain that had defined him. She leaned in, not for a kiss but a whispered promise. "You are more than your name, Draco Malfoy, and I will never believe that silence speaks the truth again." He watched her walk away, the rain washing away his tears, leaving him once again a solitary figure. But this time, he was a solitary figure, carrying a different kind of burden, the weight of a love he had chosen to sacrifice for her. He knew he would forever carry the ghost of her touch, the memory of her understanding, a silent solace in the enduring shadow of his serpent's past, forever yearning for the lion's heart he had learned to cherish.